Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the trinkets that will be available from the dungeons of War Within Season 1. So we're not looking at just the War Within dungeons, we're only going to look at the 4 War Within dungeons and the 4 returning dungeons and look at all the trinkets that are going to be coming from them and talk about what they might do. Not really too much here is going to be like, oh, this one's going to be BIS, this one's going to suck, anything like that. It's mostly just going to be a first look at the different options that will be available in that season. So up first, we have the Aurakara Sack Brood. This is from Aurakara's City of Echoes, one of the 4 War Within dungeons. We're going to start with those 4 and then work our way back in time. This is a haste trinket that has a proc that says your abilities have a chance to stir the sack, releasing an egg, which grants you primary stat. Each egg hatches after 1 minute, and the new brood attacks your next target, inflicting nature damage over time as well. I don't know. Let's just check if this is in. Yeah, this is in on all specs as well, so it's going to be adaptive, what primary stat it gives you, not just an intellect trinket. So neat little effect there. Very flavorful. We also have the Ceaseless Swarm Gland, which says it's a primary stat, agi, or strength trinket, so not an int trinket, only the other 2 specs. Or stats, that has a proc that says the gland releases pheromones which attract the ceaseless swarm, surrounding you with a high chance to retaliate against attackers, doing nature damage over time, and reducing damage dealt to you by a flat amount. So this is just a permanent passive that you have on you. This is a tank trinket, and it will do some damage to things that attack you. But also notably, a flat damage reduction is an interesting effect that tends to scale poorly into high-end content, but can be extremely good in some situations where you're fighting a lot of enemies that are doing small amounts of damage with each attack. And sometimes there are certain effects that this sort of thing is really strong against. Generally, though, I would look at a trinket like this and say this is probably not going to be too sought after. There's Harvester's Edict, which is an intellect or agility trinket that says your spells and abilities have a chance to summon a blood worker to deliver volatile black blood to your target, exploding for damage split between all nearby enemies upon impact. Intercepting the delivery allows you to siphon its power, instead giving you mastery and a bunch of mastery for 15 seconds. I guess this isn't a bunch of mastery anymore in War Within numbers. That would have been in Dragonflight numbers. So neat little effect there. Gives you a little bit of gameplay. You know, obviously both effects are positive, but potentially knowing when you want mastery versus when you want damage is going to be a thing that you'll want to play here. Certainly in AoE, because it's split damage, you would almost always want that mastery. Maybe on single target, outside of your cooldowns, though, you're happy to just not intercept the blood and let it hit the target. Neat little effect. Potentially, depending on tuning, could be quite strong, especially for mastery enjoyers. Okay, next dungeon is the City of Threads. This dungeon is, I think, also like Aurakara, is in the Nerubian zone. Which is the last zone. I'm not 100% sure on either of those locations, but that's my guess. This one has 4 trinkets. Actually, should do all classes. Let's just quickly make sure I had all classes. Yeah, okay, good. I guess Druid will probably see everything, but just in case there's a pure strength trinket, let's make sure we have those visible. But yeah, okay, so here's City of Threads. We have the Cyril Concoctory. This is an int trinket that says your spells have a chance to inspire you to experiment on an ally, enhancing them in unforeseen ways for 20 seconds. Yep, cool. We'll have to figure out what that means, what that does. Let's see if this is on loot filter for balance. It is, so it's on the loot filter for every spec of your, or every intellect user, rather than just healers, for instance. But yeah, we'll see how that actually causes you to enhance allies. It's sort of like IQD. Maybe this will be good, maybe this will be bad. The fact that it's random procking rather than you pressing a button as well might make this maybe better, maybe worse, depending on what the effects are. We also have the Oppressive Orator's Larynx. You can steal the vocal cords of the Orator here. Gonna guess this, yeah, of course this comes from the first boss, the Orator. This is a trinket with no primary or secondary stat on it, but your attacks have a chance to stir the larynx, allowing its dark whispers to influence you. Each whisper flows through your mind for 30 seconds, giving you primary stat. Actually, giving you strength, it looks like. So, again, oh, well, but it's on the loot filter for the other specs, so maybe this is just going to actually give you any of whatever your primary stat is. Even though it's showing me strength, I'm currently in resto spec right now, so it would show me intellect. It should show me intellect if that's how it works, but obviously it's alpha, things get buggy. It also has an on use that says, wave the larynx in the air to release a tormenting chorus, doing a bunch of shadow damage over 3 seconds. Your whispers leave to join the chorus, increasing its damage before falling silent. So basically, you'll have this larynx. You will get stacks that probably overlap with each other but don't extend each other. That's not guaranteed, that's just how I'm reading this. Of primary stat, and then you can on use press this for damage that also does more damage but eats up all of those primary stat stacks. It is over 3 seconds, so it's unknown, but my guess is that you'll actually have to channel this, especially because it's quite a big number of how much damage it does. My guess is you're actually standing there and channeling this and not able to cast other stuff over those 3 seconds, but we'll have to see on that front. Then we have the Twin Fang Instruments that says on use. So this is an agility trinket that on use opens the pouch and draws Nyx's Shadow Blade to quickly strike at enemies in front of you, doing damage to all enemies hit. You may use the pouch up to 0 additional times within until canceled before it seals itself to magically recharge its contents. So that 0 is a number that we don't, it's not going to be 0, and within until canceled is the string that shows up when they have a time that isn't defined in the code. So that'll be some amount of seconds, right? It'll be like within 10 seconds or something like that. Within 5 seconds is what you can read whenever it says until cancel. It just means they haven't decided yet. But yeah, so you can use the pouch, let's say, up to maybe 2 additional times within 10 seconds before it seals itself to magically recharge its contents. And then it has second strike and third strike. So yeah, 2 additional times would be my guess actually then. The second strike opens the pouch and draws Vix's Frostblade to launch a long-range attack that deals frost damage split between enemies it passes through. And then the third strike deals both of those 2 strikes. It deals the frontal Shadow Strike that is all enemies hit, and that one's notably not split damage as well, so that one scales into AoE nicely, and then also does the second strike that deals frost damage but is split, but is more total damage. So interesting little effects there. I suspect that you'll probably just kind of smash all 3 of these and not try and do too much optimizing of getting the strikes to their full value, but just an agi trinket that, once every 2 minutes you can do some damage with these different combo effects. Okay, up next we have the viscous Coag Glam. The viscous Coag Glam is an int trinket that says your excessive healing attracts nearby shadow energy to your party, storing up to 40,000 healing and restoring the target's health when they receive damage. On use, you can channel the Coag Glam's power, which directs all current shadow energy to your target. So basically this stores up overhealing across your whole party, and then that overhealing will heal that person when they take damage. But you can do this on use. So say you're healing a group, right? And the whole group is topped. Everybody has 40,000 healing stored on them. Your tank takes a hit for half their health bar, and you're like, oh crap, I gotta heal my tank. Your tank will get healed for their overhealing, right? But the other 4 people in your group are all holding excess overhealing still on them through the Coag Glam. Then you can, on use, click this Coag Glam and send all of that extra healing onto your tank and heal them for a bunch of extra healing. Interesting effect. Seems pretty powerful, reminiscent to me of, anytime there are powerful trinkets that do good things with overhealing, that can be pretty strong, but I think that would be especially strong with the way that like Dragonflight healing works right now, for instance. Although, of course, being healing instead of shielding, this is not going to prevent one-shots or anything like that, but it still seems like a pretty neat little healer effect here. So I'm not a healer, but this reads to me to be quite powerful as far as effects go. Obviously, tuning will be an important variable there too. All right, the next dungeon that is in the rotation is the Stone Vault. This dungeon has 4 trinkets as well. We have the High Speaker's Accretion, which, not to be confused with the High Speaker's Secretion or anything like that. This one is a mastery trinket that on use charges the crystal to summon a rift that draws power from nearby enemies, inflicting damage over 6 seconds. When the rift collapses, its drawn energy returns to you to give you primary stat, which is increased for each enemy struck. So potentially a very strong button to press at the start of an AoE pull, right? Like, this is a mastery trinket instead of a primary stat trinket, but it's primary stat on use with a bunch of damage that, like, you press this on pull, bang, black hole does a bunch of damage, right? And then you get a bunch of primary stat for use with your cooldowns. So I guess you do have to wait 6 seconds for the primary stat. Maybe that'll be a pain in some cases, but this seems like it would be pretty good for like M+. We have the Overclocked Geararang Launcher. This is a trinket that doesn't have primary or secondary stat on it. On use, you launch a superheated Geararang, dealing flame strike damage to enemies, losing heat as it cuts through them. Your melee attacks have a chance to crank the launcher's gears, decreasing its cooldown by 5 seconds, and heating up your weapon, which causes your next attack to do additional fire damage. So this is going to be desynced with CDs and stuff like that pretty quickly, but it's just a raw damage thing, right? Like you're going to get damage procs on the equip, and you're also going to be able to just press the thing whenever it shows up to do a bunch of damage. Cool. Raw damage, no stats, will be good for some specs that enjoy that kind of thing. We have the Scrap Singer's Symphony, which is an intellect trinket that says your healing abilities have a chance to call the nearby metal to form a shield around an ally, which absorbs damage. The shield reacts explosively to fire, inflicting fire damage to nearby enemies when struck. So you can basically put, this is kind of like Ward of Faceless Ire, right? Something like that, except it's just an intellect trinket. So it's kind of like Leaf as well from Dragonflight Season 3 from the Everbloom. And yeah, you just put a shield on somebody, absorb some damage, and then when they get hit, it does some AoE as well. Usually you just be wearing this for the damage effect rather than, or for the heal effect rather than worrying too much about getting value out of that damage. Making shields on people, often non-tanks as well, just lets them survive one-shots in high-end content. Remains to be seen whether War Within is about surviving one-shots in the same way that Dragonflight high-end content is, though. If it is, this will be a very powerful trinket for not just the healer, but for, like, Aug Evokers, too. Then we have the Skarmorak Shard. This is a strength trinket that you can, on use, once every 90 seconds, grasp the shard tightly to enrich yourself with crystalline energy, which increases your mastery by a bunch for 15 seconds. And the shard draws in remnant energy from defeated enemies, giving you mastery, stacking up to 5 times a smaller amount for 15 seconds. Again, this seems to me to be quite a good M+ trinket. This sort of trinket especially would be good on Spiteful Week if the Spiteful Shades count as extra enemies for this, which I assume they probably would. So, yeah, nice, neat. If you're a strength mastery enjoyer, this is probably just going to be a nice, solid option here. Maybe a Fury Warrior special as well, because it's a 90-second CD on the on-use. Yeah, could be pretty good. All right, the final War Within Season 1 War Within dungeon is the Dawnbreaker. Up first, we have the Empowering Crystal of Anubikaj. This is an intellect trinket that says your spells and abilities have a chance to let loose a nascent empowerment from the crystal, increasing a random secondary stat by 2,206 for 20 seconds. And this is an intellect or agility trinket, right? So this is just the raw stat stick for those stats that will give you random proc secondaries. Presumably this is like 1 proc per minute, something like that, and giving you a nice hit of just random stats. If you're somebody that doesn't care too much about stats, but you just know you want stats more than effects, this could be for you. Over here we have Moreldar's Toll. This is a intellect trinket that once every 90 seconds you can use it to release a toll of holy light upon the target, doing a bunch of holy damage, and the next 5 targets, or the next 5 allies to attack the target will get a versatility buff for 10 seconds. So another nice, potentially Aug Evoker-y type trinket. Giving people verse, always a strong thing to do as well, defensively and offensively. 90-second cooldown here as well, so we'll see how that lines up with different types of things. Up next, we have the Void Pact Stone. This is a strength trinket that says your attacks have a chance to call to the pact, exploding for shadow damage split between nearby enemies and increasing your haste by 500 or so. Your death breaks the pact, causing a violent explosion. Now, I don't know exactly what this does, but I sure hope it's an explosion that does a bunch of damage and also can hit your friends. That's just what I hope it does. We'll see what it ends up doing, but yeah, strength trinket with damage proc on hit gives you a little bit of haste as well. Cool. Those are the War Within dungeons that are in Season 1. In a future video, I'll take a look at the War Within dungeons that aren't in Season 1. But for the rest of this video, I actually want to go and let's do a quick little refresher on the trinkets that we're going to have access to from the Miss Aeternus Scythe. That is the Mistcaller Ocarina, which is a agi trinket that you can, on use, play a song that buffs the spirit of your allies for 15 minutes, and that gives them the low chance to get some verse on their attacks. I never really saw anybody using this thing. I actually had it out of the vault on one of my characters, and I tried to use it, and it was pretty annoying, so this one might be a good candidate for a rework. The other option is Unbound Changeling, which is an int trinket that your abilities have a chance to give you haste for 12 seconds, and I think you could change which stat this would give you by eating different food. Yeah, the strange critter has a rather unsettling habit of staring at you while you eat. I think you could make this give you different... a different proc based on whatever you wanted, whatever stat you liked. So this is a very powerful trinket back in Shadowlands, and potentially will be another strong option in War Within Season 1. We also have Necrotic Wake trinkets. We have the Bottled Flayed Wing Toxin. This is an agi trinket that you could, on use, put a poison on your weapons, which gives your attacks a high chance to deal some nature damage over time. I remember this one not being particularly highly tuned or sought after. There's the Satchel of Misbegotten Minions, which I don't remember, which can't be a good sign. This was an intellect trinket that says your damaging spells have a chance to draw a minion from the satchel, sending it running at your target where it explodes, dealing damage split between all nearby enemies, increased for each enemy struck up to 5 enemies. There's the Siphoning Phylactery Shard, which on use you could sacrifice some health to charge the phylactery. And it's an int trinket that says healing a target below 30% health, amplifies your spell, restoring additional health to the target, and this thing had a 30-second ICD, or a 30-second CD on that, rather. And yeah, I guess you get health out of this in total, plus also, of course, you know when you're safe to sacrifice some health to charge this thing up. I also don't really remember people using this, though. And then finally, there's the Spare Meat Hook. It's a strength trinket that says you can hook an enemy who's within 8 yards, causing them to bleed, reducing their movement speed, and that lasts 10 seconds or until they move more than 16 yards away from you, in which case the hook breaks. Also not one that saw very much play back in Shadowlands. Okay, then we have the Siege of Borealis coming back. This dungeon had Deadeye Spyglass. It was an agi trinket that your attacks had a chance to proc on something, mark them as dead ahead, and you get a bunch of crit from attacking that target. This one's just going to be, again, raw stat stick type effect, just a question of tuning. And there's Hadal's Nautilus, which is an int trinket. It says your damaging spells have a chance to create a water spout at your target's location. The water spout erupts after 2 seconds, dealing nature damage split among all nearby enemies, dealing increased damage when striking multiple targets. Then finally, we have Grim Batol from Cataclysm. This one has 5 trinkets. These will almost certainly be reworked or changed or adjusted, but the version that existed back in Cataclysm, we had the Corrupted Eggshell, which was an on-use, no primary stat, no secondary stat, but on use, it absorbs damage. While the shell persists, you gain mana every 5 seconds, and when the effect is canceled, you gain a bunch of mana, lasting up to 30 seconds. So, yeah, healer trinket themed around mana and shielding could be potentially pretty powerful, depending on how they overhaul this to be a modern trinket. We have Gale of Shadows, which is a haste trinket. Your healing and damage periodic spells grant 1 spell power each time they heal or deal damage. Lasts 15 seconds, stacking up to 20 times. Very unlikely that this would survive in this manner, but yeah, this was something that you'd like if you were like an Affliction Lock, a Shadow Priest, a Resto Druid, right? Any kind of periodic spell power enjoyer, periodic effect spell power enjoyer. But yeah, I suspect that this will also change quite a bit. The Mark of Cardros is a strength trinket with a 90-second on use that gives you a bunch of mastery. Now, that's pretty similar to one of the trinkets we saw from one of the War Within dungeons, which makes me think they'd maybe change this to behave a little differently than that. But, this one would literally just work in modern WoW. Skardrin's Grace is an agi trinket that also gives you mastery on use, but unlike the Mark of Cardros, which is a 90-second cooldown that gives you 15 seconds of a small amount of mastery, this gave you 35 seconds of an even smaller amount of mastery on a 2-minute CD. Very strange. Usually you don't see 35 seconds of stat. If this was put into modern WoW, there would be a serious risk of double on use with this, because trinkets put each other on a 20-second cooldown. But potentially if you were something like an Assassination Rogue, you'd be like, sweet, I press Skardrin's Grace 20 seconds before my CDs, and then I have 15 seconds of it, plus my other unused trinket, both overlapping in my CDs. So I suspect this one won't make it to live like that. Then we have Throngus's Finger, which is a parry trinket that says when you parry an attack, you gain dodge for 12 seconds, and that effect can only occur once every 60 seconds. So very much not the kind of tank trinket they make these days. Although I actually think it would be cool if they just upped the eye level on this effect, gave it a meaningful amount of parry or whatever, and we're like, yeah, here you go. You want a parry trinket? We're bringing back a Cataclysm dungeon. Here's a Cataclysm trinket. But I suspect that this one will also be changed to some amount. Anyways, those are the trinkets that we have coming in War Within Season 1. Of course, all subject to change, especially these ones, not just from Grim Batol, but from even the BFA and Shadowlands dungeons. Very likely that we're going to see some or a lot of changes to those trinkets. But it is, I think, still worth taking a quick look through these different effects. And I just think it's cool. I think it's cool to look at trinkets. Pretty cool ones from the War Within dungeons as well. I'll probably make a video looking at the other 4 War Within dungeons and also the raid trinkets too. I did take a quick look through these dungeons, searching for if there were any special effects on any weapons and stuff. I couldn't find any, but I may have missed them. So if you happen to know of any from any of these sources, please do let me know down in the comments below. I was trying to include those as well, if they existed. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.